guidelines for today. Good afternoon, and we really appreciate you joining us virtually for our CADMR seminar. My name is Dr. Lucy Ingram, and I am a faculty member in the Honor School of Public Health at the University of South Carolina, and I'm also the co-lead of the research education component of the Carolina Center on Alzheimer's Disease and Minority Research, also known as CADMR. On behalf of the CADMR team, I would like to welcome you to our seminar series on health disparities and minority aging research. And for today's seminar in particular, we are proud to have the Center for Oceans and Human Health and Climate Change Interactions as our co-sponsor. Thank you all for joining us. So a few housekeeping items. One, we ask that you enter your name and your email address in the chat box so that we may have a record of your attendance. Number two, we ask that you please keep yourself muted during the presentation. And number three, if you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat and we will monitor that chat feature and share your questions with our speaker. So without further ado, our speaker for today is Daniela Friedman. Dr. Friedman is professor and chair of the Department of Health Promotion, Education, and Behavior at the Honor School of Public Health. She conducts interdisciplinary and partner-engaged research focused on health communication with racially and ethnically diverse older populations. And she is also one of the principal investigators of the CADMR, along with Dr. Sue Lepkoff. Today, Dr. Friedman will be providing tips on how to be an effective collaborator and how to form a superb grants team. And so now, Dr. Friedman, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ingram, and hopefully everybody can hear me. Maybe just give me the thumbs up. Great, excellent, and I'll get started. Wonderful. Okay. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for attending today. I know you're attending a lot of virtual meetings. This topic is dear to me because everything I do is really in collaboration with others. That's the wonderful thing about doing work focused on health and risk communication. I've had opportunities to work with other social and behavioral scientists on research about a variety of topics, including breast and prostate cancer, clinical trials, environmental health risks, and disaster preparedness, just to name a few topics. And most, if not all, of this work engages communities and organizations across the state. So today's webinar is based on my experiences. There are likely many, many more steps and layers to starting and sustaining collaborations. However, today I plan to speak about 7 layers, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about each of these steps. And I'm going to start with the one at the bottom layer of this lovely cake. First, we're going to talk about how to find collaborators, consider carefully how and when you ask, discuss a starting point, establish clear deliverables, consider tools for effective collaboration and communication, invest in your relationships and evaluate them for continued improvement, and leave toxicity behind. And we're also going to make this presentation interactive. I know it's Friday, but we're going to make it interactive. And for each layer or step, I've included some lyrics to a song, and I want you to guess the name of the song based on the lyrics. So you can write your guess in the chat room. And we also have some audio clips that I hope will work. So this is our chance to sing together virtually. Just what you thought you were going to do on a Friday afternoon. All right, so layer number 1 is the step of actually finding collaborators. And it's really important to do this early in the process when you have a research idea. This seems really simple and really obvious, but I have seen many, many, many situations when people approach others 1 to 2 weeks before grants are due and expect them to review things, write sections of the grant, send in lots of documents, and that's not really a good use of people's time to be able to deliver something in a meaningful way. So who can guess the song with these lyrics? Keep me searching and I'm growing old. Oh, Dr. Harden has guessed. Heart of Gold. Excellent. And let's see if you can hear this. Sort of? All right. All right, 1 point there for Dr. Hardin. So while finding collaborators, it may seem like an obvious step, but your search is going to be different depending on whether you know the people to whom you're reaching out. So if you know them and you've worked with them before, call them, email them to set up a meeting and start the conversations. That's the simplest scenario when you know the people that you want to work with. If you don't really know the person, but you know of their work through other people, so for example, someone in another department who you've seen but not work with, ask your mentors or your colleagues who have worked with that person to help make the connection. I was involved with the American Public Health Association's Aging and Public Health section for many years, and my colleagues through that section helped connect me with research collaborators. Finally, if you're looking for someone with specific expertise in a content area or specific methodology and you don't know anyone, and your mentors or colleagues may not know anyone either, look at names of people on manuscripts in PubMed or on funded grants in the NIH Reporter website or on your university website. So for example, at University of South Carolina, we have a faculty expertise database on our web portal called USERA. It's important to learn about people's research first, so when you do reach out via email, especially if you don't know the person and you're sort of making a cold call or email, that the individual knows that you've done some background. Whoops. All right. Second step, you have identified a collaborator, and the next step is focused on how to do the outreach. So how to make the ask, and consider carefully how and when to ask. So music trivia for this layer. What song has the lyrics, "If you ask me to, I just might"? Can you hear that, maybe? Lucy, I think you guessed something in there. So that was Celine Dion, and I think the song is just called "If You Ask Me To." So that one was pretty simple. All right. So the outreach strategy, again, is going to depend on how well you know the individual. For people you know, again, reach out, call, email, meet them, send them a message on Twitter, start the conversation, say this grant announcement has just come out, let's go read it together, get together over coffee and talk about it. For people you sort of know, again, you could do the same thing or ask somebody to connect you. For people you don't know, how do you make the ask? Again, if someone else knows them, ask them to connect you. If nobody else knows them, you will need to do this yourself and show that you've done your research. What have they published? What grants have they secured? Does it appear from your investigations that they work with other people, that they're open to working with other people? Do they publish mostly on their own? Are they part of a research group or a center? All things that you want to know as you're making the ask and reaching out. Here is the first example of one of my experiences, and we'll call this anonymous example number 1. So this is a researcher outside of your unit, outside of my unit, reaches out via email. The person provides a biosketch template, indicates that they're submitting a grant within 1 week, and asks if I'll send a biosketch and whether I feel comfortable lending 5 to 10% effort. And I asked myself, to do what? It wasn't clear. So you may need to decline when something like this happens, when an ask happens too close to the deadline. And that's all right. You may be uncomfortable saying no, or it may be very easy for you to say no if you're really busy with other things. But what would be a helpful next step? You may not want to sever that relationship So the next step is on to layer 3, discuss a starting point. It's okay to decline when a rushed ask like that is made, but you may not want to turn it down completely or assume you can't have a future collaboration. So that's why I've included here layer 3 as discussing a starting point. So related music trivia here. What song has the lyrics, "Before the rising sun we fly, so many roads to choose"? No. Oh, you got it. Okay, Dr. Hardin got it again. The Carpenters, We've Only Just Begun. I feel old with these song selections. Anyway, so discussing a starting point to your collaboration will once again depend on whether you've ever worked with the person. So have you worked together previously? If yes, show me the evidence. So do you have the scholarly products? It's really important to show clearly in any grant application that you've collaborated with your co-investigators on papers or other funded research. If you sort of have worked together previously, maybe you've submitted a conference abstract, still take some more time to work on the evidence. So don't rush right to submitting that grant proposal. See how you can work together first and potentially co-author and collaborate on some scholarly products, like potentially some more conference presentations and some papers. If you've never worked together previously, take the time to learn about each other's work and start on, you guessed it, the scholarly products. So start with the papers, start with the presentations, and don't always jump right to the grant proposal. So here's my first non-anonymous example that relates to layer 3, which is a starting point for a collaboration. I was invited to speak about health literacy at a hospital association meeting because of a story that was brought up at one of their meetings. So my new collaboration that I have with the hospital association and community and clinical partners was developed in response to this story, which is an all too familiar story about a patient who arrived frequently in need of hospital stays. After admission and treatment, her condition would improve, but she would be discharged only to return for readmittance every week or two. A deeper conversation followed by a home visit revealed that the patient couldn't read and did not understand how to appropriately take her medication. And that's why she kept being readmitted to the ER. So this conversation and this story came up at the hospital association meeting, and they reached out to me. And following my presentation, calls began with some key players at the table. We began to share information about our work, how we could work together to create a program to improve patient-provider communication in clinics. We didn't start right off the bat to say, let's apply for funds and move forward and do something statewide. Some people wanted to do that. And I said, let's start a little bit slower, let's step back. So we wrote abstracts together for conferences. We presented on panels together for invited meetings. And then we secured a collaborative grant, but not right after that. First, we did a pilot project and we collected some data so that we were able to show that we had some data before we applied for additional funds. This was our team. There are so many champions in this group who really pushed for this initiative to move forward. There's a CMIO of a hospital, consultants, hospital association leadership, Access Health Partners, and USC faculty and staff. All right, so you have a team in place. The fourth layer is to establish clear roles for each collaborator. Why is each person at the table? What do they bring? Sitting down to discuss what pieces people want to be involved with is really important at the start of the collaboration, and it'll also help you establish how to work together. What do people like to do? What sections of a grant do they really like to work on? How will you divide up the work? How will those assignments be made? By expertise and interest level, potentially. So, okay, music trivia for this step on roles and clear roles. What song has the lyrics, when you know the notes to sing, you can sing most anything? It's a little quiet, that music. You got it, Sound of Music, Do a Deer. Do, re, mi. Excellent. I don't hear anyone singing, but you're guessing correctly. Excellent. Okay, so this step is really important to me, even in writing manuscripts, ensuring that authors have a role to play in conceptualizing the work and writing specific sections of the paper. And in the field of health communication, process is really important. And so while the end game and the finish line of getting your deliverables out the door is really important, focusing on how to get there can be even more important. If people don't have roles or are assigned roles that don't fit with their expertise, you'll likely not have a sustainable partnership. This might just be a one-off paper and people realize this may not be the best use of my time. In NIH proposals now, within the new human subject section, some of you may have already seen, you need to include team members' roles very clearly and what everyone would be doing on the proposed grant. So this is just an example from a previous submission, and I typically include people's roles by project aims. So this layer around clear roles to help you get to your deliverables is actually required by funding agencies now. So not just me recommending this in my 7 steps to collaboration, but this is also really important when it comes to submitting grant proposals. You will need to include information on how everybody is contributing. Here's an example of a figure that was included in a collaborative grant proposal I submitted, and some of you on this call were part of that proposal. And I show you this because I am really bad at creating images that are supposed to fit within Word documents. But I have colleagues and collaborators who create incredible conceptual frameworks like this, and I loved how this one came together. This was not my strength, but I knew that it was their strength, and they did such a wonderful job on pulling that together. The same applies to this logic model. I can create a logic model, but I knew one of our team members would be able to take our aims and outcomes and turn this into something incredible. And this is the logic model for the health literacy project I mentioned earlier. There is one thing missing from this logic model though, based on a previous slide. What might that be? And something that I'm starting to include in future logic models. Even if the version of it is just for the core team. Can anyone type into the chat what they think might be missing based on previous step about people's involvement? Absolutely. So Dr. Ingram indicated roles and responsibilities. And I thought having that listed next to the activities, the outcomes, all sections of this logic model really could have been included. And so moving forward with these types of visuals that we keep for our core team, I think even having it clearly laid out on a visual like this will be important. So the Arnold School had funding for a long time through CDC's Healthy Aging Research Network and the Healthy Brain Research Network. Dr. Lefkoff was very involved with the Healthy Brain Research Network and others on this call. I was fortunate to be part of these networks and through them got to collaborate with other funded centers across the country. And the RICMAR functions in the same way. So our CADMR, our center, is part of a national network of other funded centers across the country. So through our healthy aging work, we use the collective impact model for our collaborations. And you've probably seen and heard of the collective impact model, but I'll just talk a little bit about how we use that for the collaborations that were part of this network. So the collective impact model underscores the belief that there's no other way society will achieve large-scale progress against urgent and complex problems unless a collective and collaborative approach becomes the accepted way of doing business. And that's That's directly from this the paper here. The Healthy Aging Research Network's collaboration provided a means to collectively build capacity for practice and policy, reduce duplication in health promotion and aging efforts across the country, maximize efficient use of resources, and really ultimately to create synergy for advancing our healthy aging agenda. The collaborative model was built upon a backbone organization. So we had a coordinating center at the University of Washington, setting of common agendas, and continuous, frequent, regular communication. And we have the same setup now with our CADMR, that we have a coordinating center at UCLA. So here is anonymous example number 2 that relates to layer 4 that we mentioned on having clear roles on all deliverables. So this was an example where we, the researchers, we had some free rein on what we could do. The process for this particular project was well, I guess I'll say us, the researchers, were told to tell the funder what the community needs. That's great. We're already working with the community. Then the funders would give the researchers the money to do the work. So sounds like clear roles, and we'll tell them what we need to do. We'll get the funds and then we'll move forward. Well, it sounds like it might all work out, but the different groups and entities involved, funders, researchers, stakeholders, everyone had somewhat different goals, timelines, ideas for deliverables, and actually how the money would be used in the end. But overall, there was this shared vision. The project did move forward, but it was complicated. Establishing those roles and goals up front is really key. Otherwise, like we had in this situation, there were a lot of changes and backtracking on the work, and the deliverables were not met on time. And I'll tell you one holdup that can happen is when people want to move forward with materials, especially if you're doing a campaign and just to get out marketing materials really quickly, instead of testing messages first and piloting any of the messages that you're sending out. And that was one of the conflicts and the issues that happened with this example. So people having different timelines, and also at first we were told that we did have free rein to move forward with our ideas, and in the end we really didn't. All right, so we've talked about the roles, making sure you have clear deliverables. How do you talk about all of that? Well, it's really important to consider tools for communication. So layer 5 is, how do you communicate with collaborators? We found them, we reached out to them, we're establishing, we're doing work together, we're talking about our deliverables. How are we doing that? So establishing how you're going to communicate during the collaboration is key. And for music trivia for this step, what song has the lyrics, winter, spring, summer, or fall? Dr. Valtorta, you got it. Marco got it. You've got a friend. I could play that one for the whole rest of the presentation. I love that, but I know Dr. Ingram wants me to keep going, so I'll keep going here. So when I first started on this presentation, thinking we would be doing it during the spring semester and potentially in person, I never imagined we'd be living and working remotely for this long. So in the current climate, we need to be creative in how we work together. Whoops, I've learned that night owls and early birds can still work together in perfect harmony. Like I said, it's really important now that we are virtual. We need to consider virtual for a lot of our meetings. We may be able to have in-person moving forward, but we won't be able to have a lot of people together at once in person. And virtual, people have different comfort level with virtual correspondence. There are different platforms that you can use. We've all been using them over the past few months. Before selecting one, see what people prefer. Have a conversation about that. See what works best for your group when you're having meetings. There are different examples that I've included here: Teams, Zoom, Skype. We've been using Blackboard Collaborate. I know some groups use Moodle at different universities. There's lots of different tools that we could use. How often to meet And sticking to whatever you decide upon is going to be important. So establishing this up front, whether you're going to have weekly meetings, bi-weekly, monthly. I always recommend to have core team meetings more frequently, and then potentially have those larger group meetings with other partners and stakeholders less often, but that's more to provide updates and to seek input. Communication is really important. Again, having a good process in place so that you can achieve success and reach your team goals. It's going to be really, really important. So here is an anonymous example number 3 related to the importance of communication. And this is, I don't know, from the title here, what did we have? Tips, tactics, and tales. This was a horrible tale. I guess this did not start well. So I was asked to lead a pilot project proposal within a larger grant. I wrote the proposal and I made the assumption that the center leadership had communicated with everyone that I was asked to write this piece of the grant proposal. I was really honored. I was excited that I was given this opportunity. I was junior faculty at the time. So I pulled it together. I thought I did a really good job. Well, when I sent it out to the full team, there were some angry emails that transpired. So who's Daniela? We've already done this work. Why is she involved? There were expected partnerships dictated by funders for this larger proposal, this larger center. And so I was horrified, and I should not have made any assumptions that others had communicated with their established partners that I was involved. So I really learned a lesson that I should not have made any assumptions, and I should have reached out directly to all of the partners and collaborators. So despite that rocky start, I stuck to it. So remember that step 3, find that starting point. Don't just give up, and see how you can work together. So we've remained a collaborative team. We've been doing work together for over 8 years. We've had student successes, leveraged fundings. Our partners have won awards. We've presented together. We've had collaborative deliverables. And something that's really important that we did is we assessed our partnership over time, so that we could see how we could improve and what we could do better. And we've continued to work with partners on numerous grants. And so this started out really, really rocky. I remember I had sent the email with the grant proposal draft, and then I had driven to Atlanta for another grant meeting. And I got to the hotel and I saw all of these emails, and I thought, okay, that's when I learned not to respond to an email right away, just to wait and not to respond, because I was really nervous. But it really taught me not to make assumptions, and really to do the work and to establish those partnerships up front. Don't think someone else is going to do that for you. So you establish the partnerships. Don't just move forward thinking that you don't need to do anything else. Invest in your relationships and your collaborators, and it's important to evaluate how things are going for improvement. So after you finish up writing a paper or a grant, or even while you're doing it, you know, how did this go? What would we do differently next time? All right, so music trivia for this step, we've got 2. I went a little crazy with this. So we've got 2. The first one is Get Up Everybody and Sing. Well done. Well done. Between Lucy, James, and Marco, I'm not sure who's winning this. All right, excellent. And then because I couldn't pick one, I included this one also. Oops, I've got 2 songs going at the same time. Goodness gracious. Let's try that again. Very good. Yes, it is from Greece. Maggie got it, and it is We Go Together. Excellent. All right. So photos here are of centers and collaborative grant teams with investigators and partners, and I wanted to show some of our collaborative teams here. We've got the Office for the Study of Aging to the left. We've got some members of our CCADMR team to the right. All right, those are nice photos. All right, I think this is one of our last examples, an anonymous example number 4. So this is related to investing in relationships. So this is an example of a grant collaboration where the focus shifted after our grant was funded. So we were a newly established team. There were other centers that were also funded. And all of a sudden there was this shift, and it was dictated by funders and other funded sites who were more established than we are. And we were not sure what we were going to do. And so I felt like, oh gosh, we're going to be flying by the seat of our pants. This is not something that we're going to be able to handle. Again, we were the new kids on the block, but before we had applied for this grant, even though we were new, we invested in each other, in the partnership. We were writing together. We knew how we worked together, and we knew our strengths. We were always checking in with each other. And we had strengths in community-based research, formative, we were interdisciplinary, and we were collaborative. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen if people would stick around, and they did, and we moved forward, and that grant is still going on today. And so having all of these steps in place is really, really helpful when something changes, when there's a shift. Look at our shift right now with us working from home. If you've had a good experience working with your collaborators before now, hopefully it's continued because you have those relationships, and you know what your strengths are, and you've already talked about your expectations of each other. Here are some additional collaborations. We've got our Healthy Brain Research Network on the top left, Cancer Prevention and Control Research Network on the right, and then in the middle, we've got our Centers for Oceans and Human Health and Climate Change Interactions, Collaborators, and other funded PO1 centers that are also focused in that area in the bottom center, which is wonderful. And I know we have people on the call from that grant today. Publishing on the process and evaluating your process and your partnership is really important, and we've taken time to do this for several initiatives. I've included some examples of some of our papers and tools we've used to assess our collaborations with both investigators and stakeholders include Principles of Partnership and a Community Campus Partnership Tool. It's a long title, the Partner Tool, and the Wilder Collaboration Factors Inventory. And I can share these papers and these tools with anybody who's interested if you want to follow up with me. And just having regular check-in during projects while they're ongoing, and then debriefing, as I said, following each collaboration is going to be important. Okay, so this is our last and final layer for today, layer 7. Leave toxicity behind. If things aren't working out, that's okay. I was really worried when I wrote that pilot proposal that that was not going to work out, that I had written all of that and then that was going to be it. And maybe it would have ended up that way and it would have been okay. I would have spent a lot of time and regretted it, but I should have done better in that situation. It did work out, but if it didn't, I would have had to accept it. Sometimes you just have a gut feeling about something or somebody, and then it's not going to be a good collaboration. It's more difficult for junior researchers to navigate this type of situation and to say no. And so I highly recommend you ask a trusted mentor, department chair, peer, or a colleague for advice if you feel that you need to say no or if you need to step away from a collaboration. So again, we've got 2 final songs here, music trivia for this step. Regarding leave toxicity behind. Just turn around now because you're not welcome anymore. Excellent. All right, and then because I couldn't resist, and I have a young child, though I don't think he likes this movie, but the last song, Let It Go, which is Let It Go. You got it, Stephanie. Marco's including the singers too. I love this. And Audrey got I Will Survive also. Excellent. So, what I'm about to say is from one of the references that you'll see on the final slide, but some collaborative projects have difficult people, difficult situations and interactions, and it does put a strain on everybody in the group, and it can affect relationships that would otherwise be productive. And so sometimes it's tough to call out these behaviors, but again, you may not want to sever the relationship. Give people a chance to redeem themselves or look for other ways to get people's input. Meet them where they are. I think back to our slide on different ways to communicate. If it doesn't work out, you can revise previous agreements, authorship, especially when it comes to authorship, and we just shouldn't reward shirking or bad behavior. Sometimes you just need to get out of the collaboration and it may not work out, and that's okay. So back to our 7 layers. This time we have a superhero cake, and just for you to see all of the 7 layers together, we've talked about how to even find the collaborators once you've found someone you want to work with, how and when to ask, discuss a starting point, establish those clear deliverables, consider those tools for effective communication, invest in the relationships, and leave toxicity behind. Here are a few additional lessons, and it's really interesting. These are lessons I've learned from collaborators, and these are lessons that are key to effective risk and crisis communication, which I also teach in my classes. So in any communication that we're doing, we need to keep it simple, be clear, don't be clear as mud. And I refer, in our context here for this presentation on collaborations, be clear about expectations. Meet people where they are with content, with how you want to communicate, with what's expected of them. Don't lecture people, listen first, acknowledge their concerns, build trust, and establish roles. Give people things to do, mobilize them, give people a sense of control. Everybody on a project should have a role. So here's a fun photo. This is Dr. Swanarp Adams and me. This is a blow-up colon from MUSC that's used as an education tool. And this blow-up colon, was used the night that our partners at Trinity Baptist Church presented a play on colorectal cancer screening. And I just like to show this. It's a fun picture. You can go through and you can look and feel the different polyps and learn about colon cancer. Our partnership with Trinity resulted in a manuscript focused on the play and the evaluation. Reverends and health ministry leaders from the church published with us. And so this really was a community and university partnership, but then also partnership across units on campus as well. So a few more takeaways based on our 7 layers. What led to the successful collaborations discussed, and what would have made the difficult ones presented more effective? So I or others, we reached out early. Again, it's never early enough. Having a shared vision and clear expectations, trust, discussing goals and deliverables up front, as well as having your process in place, clear roles. See, repeating things also helps, so it helps me remember these things. So this is why I've had all of these summarized on the slide here. And we've communicated our successes, and sharing those sets you up for continued partnerships and sustainability down the road. Know that each project and every collaboration is unique. You may not be able to replicate it, but you can apply what you've learned from one to the other. Here are some resources that you might find interesting and ones that I consulted for today's presentation. If you want me to share any of the articles, I can do that as well. I show this photo of my son and his friends because I always talk about my child, but on this last slide, I show this photo specifically. This was a catapult competition that he was involved in earlier this year. And so he and his teammates, they had to build the catapult, launch the pennies into the target, which figuring out how many pennies to put in. And the target was a cardboard castle. And this could not have been done by one person alone. When they each tried individually, it did not work out well. But it took all 3 of them to reach their goal. And as a team, they actually got the pennies in the castle. So I just show that to show another example of good collaboration. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for participating in our music trivia today. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Ingram.
Thank you so much, Dr. Friedman. I see Dr. Lefkoff clapping. Please feel free to virtually applaud Dr. Friedman. That was really great, and I really appreciate having with you the way that you can articulate these experiences in such a practical and matter-of-fact way. I think a lot of these things we probably know, but seeing them together as a 7-layer cake and having that visual of the superhero cake in particular, was that at your home? Did you do that?
I do not bake, but I'll tell you, I was able to find that those lovely cakes on some cake websites through Google.
And as Dr. Valtorta reminded us, you should give people credit. So we're going to make sure that we do that for next time. So one of my colleagues just reminded me, for those of you who may have joined us after we began, please do put your name and email address in the chat feature so that we may have a record of your participation. Also, if you have any questions for Dr. Friedman that you would like to enter into the chat, we are monitoring those as well. And I'll kick off, if you don't mind. How do you, if you could give a strategy, how do you balance enthusiasm and sheer energy with the very minimal time, a lot of times, that come with late breaking abstracts, I don't know, COVID related perhaps, or RFAs? How do you balance the enthusiasm to really do something with really trying to do sound science? And or I'll even flip that away from our reality, but even when we go back to life as normal, whatever that will look like, and we have the pressures of productivity, and you have the department chair, not in my anonymous example, department chair or supervisors who really are frankly encouraging you to do this work and to submit things. How do you balance having those 7 layers of good practice and strategy with sound science, with the enthusiasm and the requirements that many of us need for productivity's sake?
Oh boy, I think that's a whole other session. That's a really good question, Lucy. I think that for us to, and I mentioned reach out early and, don't ask somebody a week before. But you know what? Right now, there are a lot of late breaking abstract submission opportunities. Apply for these supplements related to COVID. You're absolutely right. Having these steps in place and being part of teams already and having that experience and following these steps, I think, is really helpful when something like that comes up, because then you have people to turn to say, I've worked with that person before. We're going to be able to support each other to do that. And then sometimes you may just not be able to. It may not be possible. And I'll tell you, I think the enthusiasm, there's an ebb and flow, and sometimes you just cannot explain where you are in that and when that's going to happen. I really think it depends on the day and the environment. And I think a lot of people have had a lot going on and limited time to apply for those. And I should have mentioned that when there are those late breaker opportunities, and there are right now, I believe, for APHA abstract submissions. So everybody knows that APHA is, I can't remember when they announced it, but they're going fully virtual, and they do have late breakers. Some sections have late breaker submissions. If you reach out to people who you know that you've worked with, who will respond. As for when we're all back and the pressures of continuing with publish or perish, I think even using the expression like that is not something that we should be doing right now. I think we're just going to have to continue conversations with people and check in with them and make sure that people are okay, because we can only do what we can.
Right.
And I think in all the emails that I've been sending to the department and other groups, I know it sounds like Groundhog Day, that I'm part of that movie or something, but all I can say is please be patient with me, be patient with each other, be patient with yourself. And I hope that we can all give each other that consistent message. And I'm open to hearing how other people would respond to that as well. Thanks
for that. Yes, definitely. If there are colleagues who have response to that. And I want to say that I think that's important for junior faculty to hear as well. And also, what you didn't say specifically, but what I'm hearing is it's okay to say no, right? So I think there's a pressure that comes with being junior and trying to seek mentorship and wanting to make sure that you're doing the things that you should be doing in order, again, to be perceived as productive. But then there are strategically some things that just don't make sense for your career. And so really seeking guidance even in that decision making, I think is good advice.
Yeah. It is okay to say no. And if you feel uncomfortable with how to navigate that situation, reach out to somebody who you trust. You know, I've reached out to people on this call to ask advice on what to do in certain situations. And I don't know if you remember when we were in the other building, the older building on 800 Sumter, after some of those anonymous examples happened, somebody made me a sign that said, just say no.
That's great. And we've gotten word that the QR code is not active right now. And so we are working on that small technical glitch. So thanks for sending that information my way. Other questions for Dr. Friedman? Again, you can chat them or unmute yourself.
I think there's one in the chat from Dr. Valtora. Let's see. Some research programs have matchmaking opportunities for project team building. Have you ever participated in one and if so found them to be useful? Those excellent example. And now I can see you. Hi. That's a great question. We have had some, I have experience with that actually through the Aging in Public Health section at APHA. And we used to arrange is speed dating, speed research matching with funders and senior faculty and matching people with junior faculty and those who had research ideas. So I think that those are very useful. We've tried that with students also and had some speed exchanges to see how, you know, students seeing what faculty are doing if they're looking for assistantships and things like that. So I would say those are the only two examples that I've been part of. Are there other ones that that you know of that are here at the university or others that people have been part of?
If I may say that, yeah, I have seen a few in computer science research. So IARPA, for example, the intelligence community research arm, the research arm of the intelligence community, does that fairly often.
Okay.
So they will have a day, a matchmaking day. Most recently, there is a program called the Computing Innovation Fellows Program that has NSF funding and is not actually administered directly by the NSF, but it has NSF funding. And the idea is to have postdoc opportunities for computer science PhD, recent computer science PhD graduates. This mirrors a program that was done in 2008, you know, to try to give opportunity in these difficult economic times. And there is just in this case, there's just an Excel spreadsheet with names of potential mentors that the postdocs can link up with. In 2008, they instead had a more proper matchmaking setup. I also was involved very early, a long time ago, before I came to USC, in a program on the other side when I was working for the funding agency in organizing a matchmaking day, and that was actually in person. Wow. This was in the late 1980s, and all of these had, you know, different levels of success, I would say, you know, but I think it's a useful thing to know, and the danger sometimes seems to me that you tend to accept, to be too enthusiastic and accept too quickly.
Yep.
That's something to be worried.
Yeah. So learning about it first, doing that, that research up front and having those discussions are important. I know, there's been, I know we have T32 programs at the university and other mentoring programs. And then of course our CADMR is involved, involves mentored research. And there are programs through professional organizations. If others have ones to share, please reach out, let Quentin know, and we can compile a list. That would be great. Thank you. Wonderful.
Questions or comments? Dr. Lefkoff, any additional feedback? You're really, this is your area of expertise as well, so would love to hear your thoughts about.
I can't tell you how much I appreciated hearing this presentation, Daniela. As much as I know and love you, it's always something more wonderful, whenever I hear you or with you. So I want to say that first. But I think going back to what you were saying, Lucy, your question, how to balance all of that is really critical, because everybody isn't like Daniela. And we have a lot of faculty people who are in positions of power, authority, and are chairs, and et cetera, who are not speaking, like using the words that, and creating the climate that, that you clearly, Daniela, have been able to do. So I guess my question is, how do faculty, when they're in these different kinds of environments, what are the mechanisms for, for helping them get through that? Because that's a reality. I mean, everybody, there are lots of different people in these positions. So I guess that's one of my questions, is how to really facilitate that for faculty in this time. Because I'm sure, and Dr. Valtorta, maybe you could also talk about that. How can we help these other students? These other faculty and students. It's really just, that's really what kept coming up as you were talking.
So I can start, I think, well, Sue, I'm going to use you as an example, because I think you were doing this in your role, in your Smart State Chair role, and that you've been mentoring junior faculty and have a team and a group that people reach out to you and trust you, and have that almost like having a core team, a core research group, and that folks can turn to you if they don't feel comfortable going to, direct the supervisor who is involved in their promotion, tenure, other things like that. Marco, you can speak to everything related to Faculty Senate and welfare of faculty, and I think we could do a session on that. I'd love to hear more, and I love hearing you speak about that. I think what I am trying to do also is to, in my role right now, also encourage others to be thinking in these ways. So, and that's something that I would say Lucy encouraged me to do, is how can we communicate more with other units on campus, and how can I, in my position, work with other department chairs to say, let's all make sure that we are giving the same consistent message to faculty and supporting faculty, and then also giving venues for where to go, because as people may not all feel comfortable going to the same person to get answers, or to say, I just can't do this. I need help in deciding which project to get involved with. And so I'll stop there. I want to hear from Marco, if you're willing to share your input. Those are just a couple of things that I've been trying to implement.
I'm not sure. I don't think I have much to say about this. I will mention, since you brought up Faculty Senate, there has been a recent change to the faculty manual, recent, and as in about a year ago, that concerns promotion and tenure calendars. So units now are required to publish, really, the internal deadlines for submission of promotion and tenure files. So as you know, the provost office publicizes and posts a calendar that has certain dates that are fixed and other dates that are only suggestions. You know, you see in the calendar there's underlined dates and non-underlined dates. And it turned out that some junior faculty in some units reported uneven treatment in terms of the non-underlined dates. So some, I wouldn't go as far as say favoritism with respect to some applicants, but some uneven treatment. And this led to this change. So at some point in the tenure and promotion cycle, each unit is supposed to post a clear deadline for all the applicants in the unit. So this is a small thing that goes in the direction of fairness. And I don't take credit for this. This is fully a faculty welfare committee initiative.
But I think but even something like that for everybody to know about that, I think it also just hearing that people are thinking of them, that it is important that we're sharing this information, and it gets back to the importance of communication. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah.
And I'd like to just add on to that. I think there is an enormous amount of, even though kind of administration might not see themselves as treating people differently, when people beneath them feel that, it doesn't matter what the reality is, that the higher ups need to clarify how it isn't that. And I think that is a problem that I'm dealing with on some other issues right now. But I really do think that's an issue. We have to realize, you know, what is the context in which something is being heard. And it doesn't matter what these folks up here are saying if people down here are not hearing it that way. That we all have to accept responsibility for that.
I think you're right. And Sue, you may have talked yourself into a follow-up seminar on that topic.
I'm not sure I have anything to contribute, but I know about it as an issue that we need to be dealing with.
Yeah, well, I think it's important, again, that we are as transparent as we can be in these networks when you got a pipeline of folks at different levels and stages in academia, so that folks can be aware of those types of pitfalls to avoid. So looking at the time, we are at 1:01, and I'm sure that we could continue this conversation. We want to thank you again to all of you for joining us, and a few parting words that I'll share in terms of housekeeping again. So thank you again to Dr. Friedman, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. In order for us to continue offering health disparities and minority aging content that is of interest to you, we ask that you complete a brief survey to let us know how we're doing and to give us ideas for future seminars. And so, as I noted in the chat feature, that link is now active, and our apologies for that initial issue. You may use the QR code that's on the slide to access the survey, or we can also email you the survey using the email address that you provided. And again, if you have not yet done so, please do give us your name and your email address in the chat feature. In terms of what's upcoming, our next public seminar will be on Friday, September 11th at noon, and it will be led by Ms. Megan Byers. And Megan, I believe, is on our seminar or joining us today. And she'll be speaking about the Office for the Study of Aging's Dementia Dialogues, which is an evidence-informed training course about how to care for people with dementia. So again, that's Friday, September 11th at noon. And then lastly, if you would like more information about upcoming seminars or other activities that are sponsored by our center, the CADMR, please visit our website, or you may email me at lanang@sc.edu. Okay. Any further words from the team? All right. There was a personal request for if your